Welcome to the Heart to Art podcast. I'm honored to welcome a guest whose life is not only historic, but deeply inspiring. Jennifer Hosten made international headlines in 1970 when she became the first obvious woman of color to win the Miss World title. Her win wasn't just a personal triumph, it was a cultural milestone. It happened at the height of the women's liberation movement, during a contest that was famously disrupted by feminist protesters. Through it all, Jennifer remained tall, graceful, composed, and powerful. As a beauty queen, she was confident, prepared, and the very definition of poised under pressure. Her story, told in her memoir, Upside Down, oh my gosh, Miss World 1970, was so impactful it was developed into the film Misbehaviour, starring Gugu Mbatha-Raw as Jennifer herself. But Jennifer's legacy goes far beyond the crown. She's worn many hats: broadcaster, diplomat, author, therapist, and today she joins us to reflect on that unforgettable night, the significance of representation, and how her journey continues to inspire generations. This is a conversation you don't want to miss.
Hello,
Hello,
Peta-Gaye.
Jen.
It is a pleasure to be with you.
I'm
Thank
so
you.
happy you are here. This is such an exciting moment for me. I mean, I have admired you since the first time we met, and reading your book again just brought so many new insights. But let's start at the beginning. I want to know about your upbringing in Grenada. Did anything, what inspired you actually to enter the competition? And was it anything in your upbringing that just made you so determined?
Well, it's interesting you talk about my upbringing because I was the last of five children. I never saw myself as a beauty, and I never thought about entering a beauty contest, to be quite honest with you. As you would have read in the book, it was purely accidental that I ended up at the Miss World contest in 1970. I took a chance. Yes, I realized it was a stretch for me, but you're correct. I think throughout my life, I have tended to take on challenges. I see them more as opportunities. And I also, I suppose it requires a bit of gumption when you
Mhm.
think about it. But I would also say it also requires a lot of hard work in just about any field that I have been involved in throughout my life. That hard work part of it has never been anything less than greatly important.
Mhm. There's, I hope I don't sound like I'm all over the place because having read the book a second time last night really was impactful for me in your entire life, not just the beauty contest. But what amazed me about the contest when reading the book the first time was how you were so prepared, and you didn't think of yourself as the most beautiful woman in the room, but you thought of yourself along with your sister Pami that you were going to present a package. And can you tell us what this package was and how do you think it influenced your win?
Well, first of all, I think I must have thought strategically. I had been a broadcaster. I had worked in the broadcast industry, and I had been a flight attendant. So one thing that came very naturally to me was meeting people and talking. And so I thought, well, what is my comparative advantage? And I saw that as an advantage. I thought I had a fairly good figure and probably was, easy to be described as a princess. But my daughter says, Mom, you shouldn't talk about that because that's not so. Because She might see me slightly differently, but you have asked me how I felt myself, and I'm
Mhm.
really telling you just how I saw myself at that time. The opportunity came up. I was asked to go into the Miss Grenada contest, and I knew that I did not know enough about beauty contests. So when my sister agreed to go with me and to help me, she was a beautician. I thought that that gave me the extra help that I would need. The other thing was that we spoke about the importance of presenting oneself in a contest like that, where you have 60 countries and perhaps even more people taking part, and beautiful women taking part from all over the world. How can one stand out? Well, we thought the only way to do that was to choose what would be a striking bathing suit, getting something that was really unique by way of the national costume, and an evening gown. And each one of those, the appearances that I made, I had to feel that I was, the actual clothes that I wore made me feel great. And that was the start of it. That's what I meant about being about the package.
And your evening gown you described as being your secret weapon. There's even the fact that it was not too long, so that you were able to walk across the stage. Other women had dresses that were too long and had trouble. You were able to glide across the stage in this beautiful, shimmery, golden evening gown.
Well, to describe the evening gown, I still have it, and I lent it to Google for one of the scenes in the movie Misbehaviour. But the evening gown is crocheted. The top is a beautiful crochet bodice, and then there's strings of gold strands that go from the bust line right down to the hem. And as I walked, these it was like a fringe that just moved and swayed. And because of that, I had no difficulty walking. And of course, the effect of it was really, I think it stood out.
Mhm. Another thing that struck me, Jennifer, is that only some girls were chosen to practice that final walk, and you were not one of those girls. Everyone in the book, you describe the disappointment that the ones who were not chosen. This is a practice now for that last
Mhm.
evening.
Yes, correct.
But you woke up earlier. First of all, you woke up earlier than everyone else. You were always prepared, and you practiced that evening or
Yes.
before. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I asked if I could go to the stage the next day. There was a question just at the last rehearsal. Did anybody feel that they would like to practice the next day, the final day? And I put my hand up immediately. I was the only one. A couple of others put their hands up to sort of keep me company. And about four or five of us set off in a bus or the coach to the Royal Albert Hall the day of the contest. I think most of the others wanted to get their hair done or get their nails done or whatever. But I did think that it had been, unfortunate that we had not been given, the few of us had not been given a chance to finally walk on the stage the dress on the night of the dress rehearsal. So I took advantage of it. And it turned out that as I walked on the stage, I felt an affinity with the stage. I took the opportunity of counting the steps and and really sort of making it my friend, so that in the night on the night, which was that night, the lights and the fact that the place was full of people, was less scary. You
Mhm.
know, to me, I could really just sort of present myself and think about what I had to say during the interview. And the other thing I did was to put myself in the role of Miss World. So I imagined I was a Miss World as I walked on the stage. I literally said to myself, well, if I don't imagine this now, it may never happen. So I held myself, and it was right up to the end when they actually announced that I had won. I was determined never to cry because I had seen so many girls just crying and thinking how inelegant that all looked. So I thought if I should get that opportunity, that's not what I'm going to do. But
Mhm.
I think all of that must have helped. And to be honest, there's nothing like timing in life. When I look back on that whole thing, we had the women's movement. You had them protesting and saying that women were being treated like cattle in a cattle market, and all of that. And in fact, making us, in a sense, feel that we were not there for the right reasons. But in effect, I always saw it as an opportunity to stretch myself, to meet people, to travel, and of course to make a little money if that should happen.
Absolutely. And you certainly made it happen. I love the way that you said, you are from Grenada, not Grenada. That must have really impressed people. You were prepared, maybe your broadcasting background when you were answering questions. So, but people, many of the other contestants were not happy when you won, as well as Miss Runner Up. Was it Miss Africa South? Because there was something with Miss South Africa and Miss Africa South. One was white, one was black. So the two winners, you took the title, and Miss Africa South came second. People said this must have been rigged or something was going on.
Hmm. Yes, and that was rather disappointing
Mhm.
because they thought, or they could not have imagined that two women of color would come first and second, especially in 1970. And so there had to be a reason why. And of course, they felt that some of the media started this, and it took on a life of its own, and it was very sad. It was disappointing for the few of us that really felt we, had achieved something, and we knew what we had done in order to even be considered. But that was part of the negativity. And
Mhm.
I made a conscious effort to focus on the positives, the positive fact that a woman of color had won, as you said, an obvious woman of color, because I'm not so sure that I really was the first woman of color to win this award. But having been, the darkest winner that they could remember, that was the title given to me. And I didn't, in fact, I saw it as an honor because as it turned out, this was another first. It was another first, perceived first. And here I was with an opportunity now to make the best of it and to make it so that any others that came after me, any other women of color, would be remembered, and would have the opportunity because I would set a good example for them. And so that put a certain amount of pressure, for sure, on me at that time.
You certainly paved the way for so many others after you. How did you feel when they called your name as winner? Did you sort of expect it somewhere in there, or were you completely surprised?
Well, you always hope. And, Peta-Gaye, I think you should never go into anything without believing that you have a chance. And so I did think that I'd have a chance, and I felt that I had done the best I could. If I didn't show, if I didn't place or whatever, then okay, I would accept it
Hmm.
because you know that you've done your best. But having felt that I did my best and having gotten into the semi-finals and then the finals, obviously there was a hope that I would make it. But it certainly was a surprise when I heard my name announced.
At the time, so much was going on. 1970, there was a fight for racial equality as well as a fight for women's rights. Did you feel that you were ever caught between these two movements?
Well, certainly, what was surprising was how well organized the women's movement were and how disorganized the contest organizers were in relation. They didn't seem to realize that it could really impact the way it eventually did. But I think the saddest part of that whole thing was the women's movement did not reach out to the contenders, to the competitors in the beauty contest, and didn't explain to us what they were trying to achieve. They kept saying they're not after you, they're not trying to hurt you. It's the organizers they're trying to get at,
Hmm.
but not ever explaining what they meant by a cattle market. And of course, we came from all different parts of the world. So people from Africa and South America had no clue what cattle market meant. It took me years actually later on. I could see what they were trying to say. But when I became a farmer's wife living in Ottawa, Canada, and I used to the odd time go to the sale barn where they marched the cows up and down. Then I realized what the women's movement were talking about, the cattle market that they were trying to indicate that women were. But I feel that women don't need to apologize for being in a contest. It's all part of being a feminist. If the feminists are serious, it's an issue of choice. To say that women should be equal to men, and then to tell women that they shouldn't do this or they shouldn't do that they should all be in university if they choose not to. It's not right. So I support the concept of women defining themselves. I think that we should be allowed to define ourselves however we want to define ourselves.
I'm smiling because I read that and I highlighted it in pink, that that is the true women's movement, as you so rightly put in the book. It's the choice, not so much what you do, but that you are allowed to have the freedom to make that choice.
That's right. That's true.
I think that's big. So, what advice would you give to young women who are stepping into spaces where they may be unseen or undervalued?
Well, I think that women have so many opportunities today, starting with an education. I'm a great proponent of education. I always have been, but I think it's more important than ever that women take advantage, as they can, of getting a good education. and of setting your sights and your goals relatively high. Why try to be a secretary when you could be an administrative assistant, for instance? Why not be a doctor if you could be a nursing assistant? And I mean, and fine, you could be a nursing assistant happily too.
Mhm.
But what I mean is, if you can go further and you want to go further, then you should. You should do the best you can, take advantage of whatever opportunities, scholarships, um, generally look after those and set your goals. It'd be good to see women deciding earlier what they really want to do in life. But to be honest with you, I didn't. So if I have to give advice today, I say start earlier to prepare for what you really want to do later on. Don't get married too soon. That's the other thing. I think women have gotten, you know, into romantic relationships rather early before they can fulfill their few true callings. And I think marriage is wonderful, and I think it's great if we decide to go into a partnership where couples value each other and share those values. And I think that so I value family life as much as I value people in careers. And I think that the challenges today are so great. Um, Number one, for the opportunities we have, but how competitive the world is at the
Yes.
same time. Almost every job that people compete for, you know, is something that many other people would be wanting and qualified for.
Mhm.
So this is where opportunities come in.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to go sideways in order to go upwards. Sometimes we have to um, go on the road less traveled, you know.
Yes. So the book, where did I put the book? Really goes into your life journey, and the movie Misbehavior really focuses on the contest and the protesters, but your book goes into your life after, and you've done so many things. You were a diplomat to Grenada. Even when Grenada had a revolution, you knew the two sides involved, but you were given many, many opportunities. And I'm bringing this up because maybe you were outside of your comfort zone. I don't know what, but I want to find out from you what made you jump for all those opportunities, those incredible opportunities that took you all over the world, but you just went for it.
Well, I think that I tried to be prepared for all of those opportunities. I remember when I was asked to be Grenada's ambassador to Canada, I also took advantage of a diplomatic training course before I took the job up in Barbados, which was conducted by the government of Canada, which really put me in a good position to take up the job in Canada because the many of the tutors that we had at the course were actively in the diplomatic corps in Canada, and I could always turn to them when I needed a little advice. But so I felt I was, and then I had traveled. I traveled all over the world. I also felt that my job was to promote the island, and that's what I was told my overall, focus should be: representing the island and promoting tourism and of course, with along with the diplomatic functions. I'm a relatively diplomatic person anyway, but that's where the need for preparation was particularly important because a lot of the fascination around me at the time that I became Grenada's ambassador to Canada, High Commissioner, because it's within the Commonwealth countries, is that I had been a former Miss World. So I used to be, everyone wanted to invite me to their to the embassies, and I was determined that I would not just be a pretty face or a blank slate, so that I was prepared at all times as much as I could be, and that also entailed proper dress, and it entailed conducting myself in a way in which I knew I could be of credit to the country and to others coming after me.
And now here you are living in Canada with your family. Why did you choose Canada as your home?
Well, it's an interesting question. My mother was born in Canada, but of Caribbean heritage. The other thing is that I married a Canadian. I immigrated to Canada in the late 60s, but didn't stay very long. I entered a resident, and then I took up the job of as a as a air hostess with Caribbean Airlines, which was then BWIA, British West Indian Airways. So I didn't stay long in Canada, but I met my husband on a plane, and he was from Ottawa. So when I married him after the Miss World contest, first we lived in Bermuda for a couple of years, and then we came back to Canada. So I was actually a Canadian citizen when the Grenada government asked me to represent them in Canada. I was literally the first Canadian citizen that took up such a role. It was most unusual because you normally have to be a foreigner to be a diplomat in the country. But the prime minister at the time was Pierre Trudeau, and he made a special concession for me to have diplomatic status on the job. So when I came home, I was a Canadian citizen, and on the job I had the diplomatic status.
Wow.
And I don't think that attains any longer. I think it's gone back to the rule where you have to be a foreigner. But it served me well. And of course, I've lived in Canada off and on because later on I went back to the university and then I joined the government of Canada and worked with foreign affairs, but I worked with CEDA, which is the Canadian International Development Agency. And when they post you overseas, which they did, they posted me to Bangladesh, then you become a Canadian diplomat. So, having served Grenada for about 3 years as High Commissioner, I later on went through the Canadian government as a Canadian diplomat to Bangladesh. That was an interesting experience.
Fascinating. Your book is fascinating. I highly recommend this read because I think, we don't just learn about Grenada and Canada and the beauty contest, but it's very reflective with so much wisdom. And you've also given us so much wisdom here today. And I think people can really take away from this interview and that preparation is key for success. I really get that. And how you present yourself.
That certainly has been my experience, and it is one of the things I'd like to share. But one of the things I will add, Peta-Gaye, because you didn't mention it, and I must mention it,
Mention it.
is the pride that I have in my family. As a mother of two successful children, Sophia and Bo, and their children, so I now have five grandchildren. How blessed could anyone be than that? And so I think with all the travels and all the other things that you mentioned, which really is part of who I am in the final analysis, but really the thing that I'm most proud of today is my family, and that goes to tell me and to so that I can share with others that as much as we can be ambitious career wise, in the end, in the very end, we are truly blessed when we have a family. And so I value that. And I value the fact that I've been lucky enough to be able to have some of both, some of all of that, and still be here to share my story with you. Thank you.
I read in the book that you also share your many stories with your grandchildren, including what life was like on a farm in Ottawa. And you're right. Family is the reason why we do what we do. We do it for them, not just being ambitious. So you're absolutely right. I'm glad you brought that up. And it really was a pleasure to learn about your family in the book. So
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you for bringing that up. It was an absolute pleasure speaking to you today. I admire you so much for what you've achieved, but also just the person that you are, and what you give to others. So I feel very honored. Thank you, Jennifer.
Metagay, it was a delight to talk with you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes. And
Take care.
everyone, thank you for listening. Please share this episode or like it and comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you.